So today we're going to be looking over everything and just at the farm I've got another Vitara and I saw it had big cracks in here that have been welded up. So I thought I'd chuck it up on the hoist today and just see how this chassis is doing and whatnot. And I also finally got a set of springs for the front, so we can eliminate, like this is what it does in the bush, exactly like it's doing now, and then the spring can obviously just fall out. So we'll eliminate that spacer and then finally get the proper set of springs in this thing. So I tell you what, this thing is a bastard to get on the hoist. This arm's got to be dead straight, obviously, because there's all the weight of the engine and whatnot in the front, and then there's absolutely nothing in the back. So, and then because the chassis is so short, if I go further back with these arms, it's just going to pivot on them. But we got it on in the end. But oh, there's the old fuel filter for when it was petrol up there. Huh. But now you can get a good idea of like the fuel lines that we put in this thing, that we all made. And everybody asked me what brace I've put in this thing. So now you can actually get a good look at it, which we've drilled through the chassis rail there and it comes out the other side. And we have got a slight oil leak, but it's a diesel. Diesels always leak oil. But besides that, they're a bit wet, but I always grease these balls up. So if they leak a bit of grease, that's probably a good thing because it stops them from pitting in the balls. And you don't want pitting in your balls, do you? She's pretty good, the old gal. Our retainers are still working fine. Spring's not going anywhere. Oh, I'll have a good look over it off camera, but I'm pretty sure one of these unis is... Yeah, that one's got a bit of play in it. The worst thing about putting a diesel in this car with such small unis is it hammers unis, especially when you've got the bigger wheels on. So normally when they've got a little bit of play like that, I just pump a heap of grease in it and it takes up that slack. But that's what I'll quickly do now. And the fronts, this is pretty good in the front. The front you're only obviously using in four-wheel drive, so if they get a bit I might quickly check them anyway though. Yeah, they're still like new. That one's got a little bit of play, but it's just the back ones really from them clutch dumps. But besides that, all right, we'll get a grease gun and grease it up. That one was actually fairly dry, so hopefully that took a little bit of the play out of it. At least at full flex, so everything's sort of not pulling now. It's just that handbrake's slightly tight. Oh yeah, it's pulled the rubber out of the floor. I'll have to fix that when it goes down. And you can see, when to fit the exhaust in, that's the original brake line mount on this car, and I've had to weld this little plate on here and move the brake lines up a little bit. And I just remade a flexi line up here, and that's as simple as that. But clutch has still got, yeah, sweet. Radius arm bushes are still all fine. Oh, everything looks pretty good, I think. I was always a little bit worried about these factory engine mounts. Like when I first was putting this motor in, I was like, oh, I might cut them off and weld plates on and then weld them back on, just so, because the actual chassis in this thing, like you can hear it, they're not that thick. But I don't know, since, because I moved my engine mounts further out on the block, the actual weight is sitting down on them. It's not trying to pivot the mount, so they're actually still in pretty good shape. Surprising. Exhaust is all good. Even though I ripped this off, like, it's only on the sheet metal there, you can see where it's all bowed up. But she's doing good. Alright, let's get to putting these springs in. Now, these springs are actually from a 98 Suzuki Jimny. They're a 4-inch coil. They're out of the... Apparently it came in a diesel model, which I never heard of until I researched it. So it had a 1.5 litre little turbo diesel in it. So I got these, which I already have measured, which if I put them up on there, it's going to be kind of hard to see because I'm on my tippy toes, but they look way long enough. And I got 4-inch coils instead of 3-inch because I thought if they're too long, I can always cut a section off and I can make them suit the ride height. But before I cut them, I'll let them, because they're obviously new springs settle, so I'll leave them in for a couple weeks or months or whatever and let it all settle, and then I'll just see where it sits, the ride height sits. So all right, now we can go up a fair bit. Yeah, so the spring should just lift out. And I'll need to get a screwdriver to get that off. There we go. So there's my original 2-inch spring, and let's just so it's about perfect length, because that's about, if we grab the spacer, which is right there, we put that on like that, so we're about a whole coil different. So let's Jesus. Look at that. So now the spring's not going to fall out now. All right, let's go to the other side. All right, so we got the 2 springs in. because it's panhard, obviously the diff's pulled right over. That's why they're on a hectic angle. So let's let it down and just see what the spring does. So they actually sit in perfect. That one's located all the way down. At least the coil's not going to fall out now because they'll be wrapped around tight. Because that actually happened before. Because the space is on the coil hat, the actual coil doesn't locate on much with these. So it only happened once, but it was so annoying because I obviously didn't come prepared and I didn't bring tools out forward drive and that to put the coil back in because it's never actually happened before. But so at least it won't happen now. All right, let's lower it all the way down and just see what the ride height looks like. All right, that's off the hoist now, and it's sitting a lot higher than I thought it would be. Like I said, it's going to drop, but you can see I'd have to readjust the panhard because the wheel is slightly in there and she slightly sticks out there. All right, well, we'll bolt the shockers back up, and I wonder how much up travel I still got on there. Plenty, yeah. Alright, the shockers are bolted up. That's heaps better now. She just sits a little bit high though. The only thing, like people, you might think I can just put spacers in the back to bring it up a bit higher, but then my tail shaft angle gets too great and then you end up, I'm already got a bad enough uni problem at the minute. I don't want to make it worse by lift jacking it up more. And in saying that though, when I put this motor in, I actually got the uni on a better angle than it was factory. That's why if you look, the motor actually slants right back because I lifted the motor and kept the gearbox. Obviously I didn't want to redo the mount because I didn't want the gearbox to sit lower because then you're more liable to hit it on rocks. So I lifted the motor up to try and get that rear tail shaft angle better. And because it's not all-wheel drive like the Cruiser or something, you don't have to really worry about the front one. Yes, it's important, but you're not going down the highway with the front diff going. So that's why I had to cut a hole in the bonnet. Or I could have done like a body lift, but I didn't want it to look super jacked up going down the road. So one last thing before we finish is I want to just lift it back up now and just see the spring, how it sits in the perch when it's at full extension. So yeah, see now the actual coil is tied in there, so they're definitely not going to come out. Awesome. I'm super happy with that. You can actually see my steering arm, how bent that is. I was actually going to make some heavy duty steering arms for it because these are just literally the factory Sierra. What one is it? SJ70, which we've just cut and lengthened there and there, and that's been alright. But because Matt towed me out the bush the other week, because the front wheels weren't driving, they were getting dragged, as in rolling. When it hit a rock, it didn't drive over the rock, it more pushed into the rock, and that's how that got bent. But that was actually like bananaed the other way. I just wrapped the winch cable around the diff and then bent it back to drive home. But It's on the to-do list anyway. All right, well, we're pretty much all done for that. Like, I couldn't do that in the driveway because my jack's obviously not tall enough, and because the wheels are too tall, like, it just ends up being a mess. And it was just easier using my mate's hoist. But the biggest problem with doing an axle swap in one of these with a heavier motor is springs. Like, the amount of springs I've bought, or I've got free ones off mates, like those springs there were originally out of Mike's Vitara out of the back when I first did it, and they were alright. And then I put the diesel in it, and so it sagged a bit, so I had to put that spacer in there, and then I bought other springs. So I'm probably around $700 in just springs, just trying to get something to work. And now I finally got a set of springs that will work, because this actually uses a Nissan Patrol bottom hat, and that's actually a Jimny top hat. That's why I went with Jimny coils. But you got to sort of go with a similar car with similar weight. That's why the more research I did, I came across that Jimny and messaged the company that sold them, which was actually Jimny Bits, and asked them if they did a 4-inch coil in their diesel Jimny. So that's the ones we got. So I'm that wheel actually, if you look, that wheel's sort of flush with that flare, and then this one sticks out that little bit. I might leave it. I won't adjust the panhard for the minute, just because I want them springs to settle. I'm just impatient, and that would annoy me, that being out like that, but that's all right. But anyway, at least we got some proper springs now. We're actually going out on a bit of a 4-wheel drive trip, so we'll be able to test out these new springs and my new tyres. Now, someone in my last video, when I did the video on these China Treps, as everyone seems to keep calling them, balancing beads, they are rubbish. Like, they are good when you're up on the highway, but as soon as you stop, obviously all the beads go back down to the bottom. So when you start up, when you take off again, the wheel vibrates until you get, I don't know, a K down the road, and they straighten up again. So it's kind of frustrating. Where I'm going to take him back to me mate and get him to see if we can balance them up pretty good and take them balancing beads out, because I don't like them. It's just my preference. Some people might have better success than me, but... And the other thing too is I've had mud, because these aren't bead locks, I've had mud in the bead before, and I can see them balancing beads getting wet, and then they just stay as a big clump, and then it'd be all kinds of a mess going down the road. Your steering wheel would be going like this, and you don't really want that. So, but all right, it was just a quick video today, so thanks for watching.